Welcome to Coffee with Kupke, a production of St. Paul Inside the Walls. Here on Coffee with Kupke, we grab a cup of coffee, at least we're claiming this is coffee. We sit with Monsignor Raymond Kupke, the pastor of St. Anthony's in Hawthorne, professor at Immaculate Conception Seminary, diocesan archivist. We sit with Monsignor Kupke to delve into the history of Catholicism in the Diocese of Paterson. My name is Father Paul Manning. I am the vicar for Evangelization for the Diocese of Paterson. And here I am with Monsignor Kupke. So grab your cup of coffee and let's jump right in. I'm going to take a sip. Monsignor Kupke, welcome back.
Thank you, Father Paul. It's good to be back.
Good. We are still on chapter 6.
Endless chapter.
Yes. And I'm hoping in the next episode or two to finish chapter 6, which has been very interesting. There's a section in here that you entitled Catholic Life during this period, and you talk about, first of all, the centrality of Sunday in the life of people. Like you give an example of the Sunday schedule in, I forget which parish, but the whole day is filled.
Yeah, and people observe Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was nothing else going on. Conversely, though, for the priests, Sunday was a heavy load.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there were no anticipated masses on Saturday.
And no masses afternoon.
So everything was early.
Yeah. For example, you could not have a nuptial mass in the afternoon on Sunday.
Okay.
If you wanted to get married at mass, you did it at one of the parish masses.
Interesting.
Or Saturday morning.
Yeah. And people were fasting.
People were fasting if they were going to communion. That was,
Okay. So, and the fast was what, 12 hours at that point?
From midnight the night before.
Yeah. Okay.
So the later the mass was, the less people would be going to communion.
Okay. Interesting. Wow. Another big change that occurred in this time period, 1910, Quam Singulari.
Yes.
So Pope
Pius X
decrees that
the age of First Communion should be the age of reason, which in the United States generally was construed as 7 second graders.
Yeah, and so you talk about the fanfare associated with First Communion.
Yeah. We have a charming picture in the archives of First Communion at St. Joseph's in West Milford. And I use it often in my class in the seminary because the guys can't figure out what this is, because the first communicants are from 7 to 16. And this was the year that they caught up after Quam Singulari.
Oh.
So all of a sudden they had to have an Oleolian free year,
Yeah.
Everybody of 8 years received First Communion in the same year.
Because before Quam Singulari, they would have made communion at what age? Confirmation?
In northern New Jersey, in the Newark Diocese, the custom was, depending on the size of your parish, the bishop would come every year, every 2 years, every 3 years, or even every 4 years for confirmation and confirm everybody since the last time he was there.
Okay.
And then the next Sunday you'd receive First Communion.
Oh, from the parish priest.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it could be as late as 15, 16.
Yeah. I know that when I was confirmed in 8th grade, it was every other year, I think, with Bishop Casey.
Right.
Yeah.
So, even the little flower who would have been, a child in the 1880s, I think she received First Communion like 10 months before she entered the convent.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You also talked about the institution of the St. Jude Novena at Our Lady of Victories. That was an interesting little story about Father Christian Pfister. Yeah,
Yes.
so tell us what that was.
Well, Our Lady of Victories is one of our more interesting parishes. You know,
we talked about it. It's been a number of different.
It's been
things.
everything for anybody.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
It has been French, Latino, Black, Italian. It has been the University Church for Seton Hall,
Yes,
Paterson.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then there's the St. Jude Novena on top of everything. So it's had many, many different phases, but geographically, it's our smallest parish. It only covers, technically, a few blocks in downtown Paterson. And they were going to disband it at this point.
Yeah, so who was the bishop at this point?
This would be Bishop Walsh.
Okay, and the parish was on the ropes?
Well, it had originally been founded for French
Yeah.
and Italian silk workers.
And so
So
times had
that
changed.
population had, died off. And its location in downtown Paterson, it was not an area
Residential.
not
Yeah.
a residential area. But Pfister was not interested in having his parish, completely
Yeah, so they sent him kind of with the intention that he would close it.
that he would gracefully close it.
Yeah. And he said, I don't want to be the last pastor.
Exactly. So he came up with a St. Jude Novena. And in its heyday, this was a major novena devotion locus in downtown Paterson. I mean, people came from all over the place. I think they have it every Thursday, I think.
Okay.
They still have, I believe, 4 or 5 novena services on Thursday, but at one time it was more like 10 or 12, and would go irregardless of what else was going on. Like on Holy Thursday,
Oh, my.
they fit in Holy Thursday in between the St. Jude novena services.
Wow. Well, you said that Father Pfister basically said to St. Jude,
Yes, if you want this parish,
you
have
better
to
make
do
this
something
work.
about it.
You do the impossible. Right?
do the impossible.
Yeah.
So, basically they were able to buy a new church building.
Oh,
That was not the original St. Our Lady of Victories.
okay.
It was a wood frame structure down the street. And then ultimately they bought the Broadway Reformed Church and turned it into...
Okay.
So St. Jude did all right by them.
Yeah, I'll say, boy. You have a section where you talk about all these parish events and fairs, and one of them that caught my eye was the chicken fair at St. Anthony's. So what was that?
I don't remember. The chicken fair?
Yeah, the chicken fair at St. Anthony's.
St. Anthony's in Hawthorne?
I believe so. Isn't there a chicken farm up by St. Anthony's?
Oh, there is now.
Goffles or
Goffle,
something? Yeah,
Goffle
yeah.
Poultry. Sure.
Okay. Well, you had this whole list.
Sorry, Joe, that I forgot about your chickens.
All these different events, and one of them was Catholic life in the early 20th century. An aspect was fraternal, wide range of societies, fraternities, sodalities, and so euchre, Halloween socials, clam chowder party and dance at St. Boniface. It was all those kinds of things. And a chicken fair at St. Anthony's. It doesn't go into any other detail. And unfortunately, there's not a footnote about it either.
No, you would think I would have one on that.
Yeah. So there's a section where you talk about anti-Catholic sentiment, and you talk about 2 things in particular. Nast. Is it Thomas Nast?
Thomas Nast, yeah.
And the KKK. So,
Well, Thomas Nast lived here in Morristown, not too far
they
from
have
here.
a plaque on his house.
Right, and he's the one that came up with the elephant and the donkey for the 2 political parties. But he also did a lot of anti-Catholic cartooning.
Yeah.
One of his famous ones shows a group of American public school children, like on the shores with their back against the wall, and bishops as crocodiles with their miters flapping up and down.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, he
That's
was
famous.
not one of our favorites.
Yeah. Did he create something with St. Nicholas or Santa Claus? Was that him or somebody else?
Yeah, Santa
The
Claus.
popular.
The popular image that we know today.
Yeah.
And then the KKK, was evident in that period in New Jersey. We have pictures of a KKK parade down Central Avenue in East Orange, and of course it took on an anti-Catholic mode. St. Monica's in Sussex Borough, the night that their first full-time pastor arrived.
Yeah, I have that note, Father Zolzer.
Henry Zolzer, right. And there was not a rectory there yet. So he stayed at the Sussex Inn the first night.
Which is still there.
Still there. And, the Klan, lit a cross on the lawn to let him know that how welcome he was.
Wow.
Dover also on the hill behind St. Mary's in Dover, behind their cemetery. There were cross burnings up there.
This would have been 1920s?
Late 20s into early 30s, yeah.
Because my parents told the story of when my grandparents bought the farm in Ironia in 1939, the KKK was active still in Ironia.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they met at one of the local stores.
Yeah. Well, I have often, sometimes when I'm in St. Anthony's Church by myself, I have conversations with the founding pastor about, how he got them to build this thing, because it's considering the size of the parish at the time and their resources, it's probably a little bit overbuilt. And only recently I came across a little comment that the Klan had been active in the Hawthorne area and had kind of suggested to him that he was not welcome, and that part of the reason the church is as big as it is because it was an anti-Klan statement. We're going to build the biggest thing. We're here. We're proud. We're not going anywhere.
And I forget, what year was St. Anthony's built?
33.
Oh, okay. Interestingly, in that section about Father Zolzer, in the footnote, you have in parentheses, Zolzer to the author.
I interviewed him.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yes.
So this, I forget, this is, he must have been an old man when you interviewed him?
Oh, he was. He was old when he was young.
Oh, okay. But what was he doing at that point that you interviewed him? You interviewed him in the 80s, right?
He was living in retirement in St. John Vianney Rectory in Stockholm.
Oh. So, and do you know when he died, Zolzer?
Sometime in the 80s, yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised I don't remember him or haven't come across him before.
He was a somewhat eccentric, he was really
most of us get eccentric in our old age, right?
Well, he was a professor by training, and had spent a long time as a professor at St. Mary's Hospital School of Nursing.
Oh.
He taught moral theology to a young woman in the nursing, and then ultimately became pastor in Franklin. And when he was made a Monsignor, they couldn't find him because he didn't like to answer his phone. So they had to send a telegram up to Franklin to let him know that he had been elevated to Monsignor because he wouldn't answer the phone.
Wow.
So he was a little eccentric.
Yeah. That must have been interesting to interview him.
It was very interesting, yes.
It's German name, Zolzer?
German name, yeah.
So this brings us to Father Stein, who in some ways is a worthy successor to Dean McNulty.
Yeah, in the early 20s when McNulty was beginning to get old and, running out of steam, presumably a little bit, Stein comes on the scene and kind of picks up the mantle a little bit in terms of church leadership in Paterson, and a different style. He was head of the Chamber of Commerce in Paterson. He was part of the negotiating team that ended the Great Silk Strike in Paterson. So he had a whole a different approach, more of a collaborative public face. The dean was kind of sui generis, but Stein was working within the
Like
organizations and structures
yeah.
that were present.
How much?
He dies too young, actually.
So, in what way?
He was only, I think, in his late 40s when he died.
And just burnt himself out, or?
I guess. He's the one that St. Anthony's in Hawthorne is named for him.
Okay.
He was pastor of Our Lady of Lourdes in Paterson. And while there, founded both St. Anthony's Hawthorne and St. Paul's Prospect Park. And then became pastor of St. Joseph's in Paterson, which at that point was the second
second
major
to
church of the city.
Cathedral, yeah.
Yeah, but did not live. I forget how old he was when he died, but he died rather young.
Yeah, the giants of this era are very engaged in the addressing social issues, and I'm just wondering how much these figures were influenced by Catholic social teaching. I'm thinking of our other podcast with Freddie and Brian. They're talking about they're in this era. Well, they passed it now, but they spent a lot of time on Rerum Novarum and the encyclicals that came after that. How much is this informing these guys? Do you think Stein and McNulty?
Not McNulty. I think McNulty's past that, but
yeah.
But Rerum Novarum, coming out in 1891, kind of unleashed a floodgate. It's funny to read it today because it's a very modest document by today's standards, but it's hard to imagine that it was as revolutionary as it was. But then in the period after the First World War, you have the establishment of the Bishop's Program for Social Reconstruction after the war. You have the founding of the NCWC. So,
National Catholic
Welfare Conference.
Okay.
The American bishops had no overall structure
yet
until World War I.
Oh.
And President Wilson asked the churches of the country. We had been an isolationist country, and then suddenly we turned around on a dime, pretty much, and entered World War I. So Wilson said to the churches of the country, we're going to need every resource we have to rearm our country to fight in this war. Will you guys step up and provide social services for the men that are going to fight in Europe?
Okay.
And one by one, they all said, yes, count on us, we'll do our part. And then the Catholics had nobody because there was no national structure for the Catholic Church to respond from. So this is one of the highest moments of the Knights of Columbus. They come into this fray with capes and swords, in full battle array, and they did a massive job at this point, organizing bandage rolling campaigns in parishes, going over to Europe and opening canteens where people could drop in. And, it's hard for us to imagine today, but many of these soldiers and sailors going over to Europe were illiterate.
Oh.
Could not write. So you could drop in one of these canteens and they would write a letter home for you. You could dictate it to them, making sure that the guys had rosaries and prayer books and the whole. So this, between that and the fact that the bishops had no structure for chaplaincy in the military.
Boy, oh boy, these are things you take for granted.
Yeah, in the Civil War, it was all by volunteer. So a regiment would just elect one of their local priests. You want to go to war with us? Sure, come on. Wow. So all of this pushed the bishops to organize And initially, they organized the National Catholic War Conference, thinking that this would disband once the war was over. But there was a little cadre of younger, more far-thinking bishops that said, no, we really need this to keep on going.
And it became the welfare.
It became the Welfare Conference and ultimately the USCCB.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And the KFC began, what year did?
KFC is in the 1880s.
And so this is now 40, 50 years in,
Yeah.
and they're organized enough and
The KFC has had remarkable national leadership through their whole history. They have reinvented themselves several times over to meet whatever the need was at the moment, like starting out as a death benefit and insurance, which they still have.
Yeah.
And then this chapter, and then after this, they will suddenly be the front men for the anti-Catholic, response to the
And was
isolationists, and then the pro-life movement. They just keep somebody
coming on board in
their headquarters, sees which way the wind is blowing and reorganizes the whole group in that direction.
And is this, do you think, because they had good Catholic men who were also competent business people and business leaders and
They were able to, this is a time when so much is done in these social circles. The KFC partly was organized because Catholics could not join the Masons.
Yeah.
And if you were a businessman in a local small town, you could be frozen out because you would not be at the Masons meeting where all the networking was taking place. So this gave the Catholic businessman some alternative.
Right.
If you look at early comedic television, this element is very present, like the Mystic Knights of the Sea with Amos and Andy, or the Loyal Order of the Raccoon.
Even
it's
in
completely
cartoons.
disappeared, because there was a time when everybody belonged to a interesting group like that, but they've all kind of disappeared. But the Knights of Columbus,
we're still at it.
They even revamped their capes and swords, and
still at it. Yeah,
still
strong.
If you go to their museum up in New Haven, it's a very interesting museum because you see how they have changed and redirected themselves, maybe 5 or 6 times over a century.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna stop here. Next time we're gonna keep exploring the depths of chapter 6 and
the chapter without end.
Yes. Until next time. Let's leave it there. I want all of you who are listening or watching to make sure that you keep an eye out or an ear out for the next episode of Coffee with Kupke. In order to stay on top of new releases, make sure you follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. And if you are on YouTube, please do drop a like and hit the bell for notifications. While you're at it, make sure to check out the other shows produced by the diocese. Those shows are Beyond the Beacon, hosted by Bishop Kevin Sweeney and Jay Agnish, our Director of Communications, and the Paul Street Journal, hosted by Brian Hansberger and Freddie Garcia. I want to give a special thanks to Joe Ginexi, our sound and visual engineer, Caitlin Ferrari, who's involved in pre- and post-production, and Freddie Garcia, who's helping out with this podcast in addition to doing his own. With all that said, I just want to thank you for joining us in Coffee with Kupke. Keep making Catholic history in the Diocese of Paterson.